Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, it's that time again. A little Middlekauff mailbag. Here's the plan. I'm going to do a huge mailbag, I think, on Wednesday, and then probably just take a couple of days to breathe. Obviously, a lot of people work on this show. Been a long season. So if you listen to this part of the mailbag, we're going to have another massive mailbag on Wednesday, and I will attempt to get to a lot of questions. But today, I'm going to try to bang out these ones that are technically in the hidden request of @JohnMiddlekauff is my Instagram. The way Instagram works, there's these DMs, and then there's these like other DMs, and then there's these hidden DMs. A lot of time, Instagram thinks it's spam, but and sometimes it is. It's like porn. But other times, it's just your questions that get kind of lost in the shuffle. So I'm going to try to bang out some of these right now. Start with Daniel. Love the pod. Been a Chiefs fan since I was 5. I'm 31. Well, enjoy it, bro. It's still insane to me that we won the Super Bowl without a true number 1 wide receiver. My question is, this offseason, who do you think the Chiefs will be looking at? And follow up, do you think players will now want to play for the Chiefs to start to ring chase? My want is Davante Adams, but curious what your thoughts are, and thanks for reading it. I think I went on Doug Gottlieb's show today, and we talked about, this offseason. This is the worst offense the Chiefs will be. Now, their defense, this might be the best defense they ever have, right? There's no guarantee Chris Jones is going to come back. Saw that Andy Reid, kind of just said, hey, it's something you got to work out, and time will tell. I haven't looked at the free agent market, but I know Mike Evans is a free agent. I think he would be a guy, definitely. They're going to become, if they already haven't, less of these guys it feels like exists. But one thing the Patriots used to take advantage of is they would get these guys to sign cheap contracts. I think you could argue this team is even more desirable than the Patriots, given their coach isn't some crazy asshole. And that sounds bad for Belichick. Obviously, I think Bill Belichick's the best coach I've ever seen. But he's not easy to play for. Now, it's not like Andy Reid's some country club. He's just an easier personality on a daily basis. So I would say that Andy Reid is a huge positive. And Mahomes, no different than Brady, is a big positive as well. So I think any big name impact player that may be a little older, that you could sign with some crappy team for $10 million, maybe signs with them for $6 million. Remember several years ago when J.J. Watt ended up going to the Cardinals? A guy like that. Players in that mold, under that kind of umbrella. So sometimes as a sports fan, your entire life sucks, right? It's just, you never get over the hump. You're just a fan of a team that can never win, that just has heartbreaks, that never wins a title. And then sometimes you're just like a Warriors fan who's 25 in 2014, and you just witnessed 4 championships in a decade. You're a Chiefs fan who, you said you're 31. 6 years ago, you are 25 years old. Patrick Mahomes comes into your life. Your life's never the same as a sports fan. You'll never look at football the same. You never will. Just like a Patriot fan. There's a decent chance the Patriots, I'll be 40 this year. The next 40 years, never win another title. Yet anyone my age will be like, we'll talk about that 20-year run for the rest of their life. Love the shows. My question is this. Was Shanahan's fate with the Niners sealed the moment he decided to not seriously study draft-eligible quarterbacks because he was just going to get Kirk Cousins? No. Kyle Shanahan has got 3 extensions. An original contract, 6 years, an extension after the Super Bowl, and then I think he got an extension last year. So Kyle Shanahan's won 8 playoff games. I would say his career, this is where I push back on all the negativity. And listen, Kyle as someone that roots for them to win, gambles on them, can drive you nuts for being a great coach. Andy, I think, would tell you, I probably drove some people nuts back in the day too. So it's part of being a coach. But his fate was definitely not sealed. He's been to multiple Super Bowls. Now, would they rather have Patrick Mahomes if they could redo it all? 100%. But I think you could play this game over and over and over again of woulda, coulda, shouldas. Think about this. Andy Reid in 2011, whenever Russell Wilson's rookie year, loved Russell Wilson. Was waiting until the third round. What if he had just pulled the trigger in the second round? Would he still be in Philadelphia? Yeah, you could play that game in a draft till the cows come home. So who cares? It's 2024. They have one of the best teams in the NFL, and they just lost a Super Bowl in basically almost double overtime. What are your thoughts on Gronkowski calling Kelce the best tight end? I know Gronk is humble and dances to the beat of his own drum, but isn't it closer than he's making it out to be? I think we talked about this last week. I think you could play this game all day long, right? Kelce's the best pass-catching tight end by far ever. And I think Gronk, I didn't watch Bavaro in the 80s, but probably the most complete tight end we've ever seen. It's hard, right? Like, you play wide receiver, you play wide receiver. You run routes, you catch the ball. I just, as a tight end, you kind of play two roles. One is to be an extra offensive lineman in the run game, and two is to be a receiver in the passing game. And that's where I think it's hard to kind of judge it back and forth. But I hear what you're saying. I know there's a long shot of you seeing this, but I grew up in a coal mining town of less than 1,000 people and never thought I could escape that lifestyle. But I watch you every day. I know more football than anyone I've met by a mile. I'm slightly educated in sports media, but couldn't afford to continue school due to personal situation. My family and I are finally stable enough for me to pursue my dream. You're living my dream. And have every resource. I wish I could pursue a career like yours, but had to settle for less to either help the family or because I was influenced to not pursue such a career because it was unrealistic. And why not try to make a life in physical labor? I know football and basketball better than anyone I've ever met. And to be honest, I gave up on my dreams because school counselors told me to be more realistic. I know I'm not an ideal candidate for any kind of hire or temp, but if any temporary positions, so this is just I'll shoot you my email. This is a good example to any young person, whether you grow up in Chicago, San Francisco, or New York, or, a small town like this guy. And it's hard when you're young. And I was lucky. I mean, I would say the luckiest thing I've ever had, beside being born into like a 2-parent home who, forced me to go to school and try in school, even though I fucking hated school. Without them, I wouldn't have tried and made sure that, I wasn't some straight A student. I might have cheated a little, but I had to because I would have gotten in trouble if I came home with like C's. So education was pushed in my house because they grew up in the area of where you had to go to college. But my mom worked for the state capitol she's had a job for the government, and my dad was a farmer, and they never once said something to me about what I was doing was weird or off the beaten path, right? It's one thing when you get into football, basketball, baseball, whatever, because you played it. It's another thing when you get into it. I didn't play past high school, and it's just one of those things that I loved and wanted to pursue doing. So I would be the first to tell you I had an easier path just by the reality of no one ever told me not to do it. And anytime people close to you, and a lot of times when you're young, the people close to you are your parents, your siblings, and either, older mentors or school counselors or whatever. If they give you negative feedback, which looking, it's easy for me to say now looking back, like, fuck that guy or that girl for telling you that. But at the time, you don't know any better. And it's hard to not take some of those words to heart. 99.9% of us aren't secure enough to understand that we do have, the best part about this country is you can kind of do anything you want. There's not some direct path there, but if there's a will, there's a way. Obviously, there are certain things financially, you can't just start off by doing, but there's definitely never been an easier time in 2024. When I see, and I listen, just if you're on Twitter, you see so many, the media is addicted to the site, even though they claim to hate it because of Elon, they've never used it more, is they can be very negative. And there's like a bitterness sometimes to that group. And the reality is it's never been a better time to work in this industry. There's never been more outlets. You just have to do them on your own. From Instagram to TikTok to YouTube to hell, Substack. When I see these guys complain, it's like, grow a pair and figure it out. Like, let's not act like it's way harder to do what I do now 25 years ago. I couldn't have just moved to Arizona. What if no one in radio would have given me a job? It's much easier to do what I'm doing in 2024 than it's ever been. Just like it's much easier to kind of be a quote unquote creator, which media people, writer, personalities are. And most of them, just like most people in society, just complain, just say, this is too hard, I can't do it. Well, that's going to be your attitude. It's never going to happen. Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 back in a bonus bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 if your first bet loses. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. Bummed that the NFL season is over. I hear that the Pats and Falcons are looking to trade for Fields and Wilson. This seems crazy. The quarterbacks available in the draft are quite good. They can build a team around these guys and give their fan base hope. Fields showed improvement, but he reverts to being so bad. But if he reverts to being bad, then they'll look like idiots. Wilson, I think he means Russell, not Zach, is done. The fact that Denver are willing to waste an exorbitant amount of cash to cut this guy says everything. What are your thoughts? We'll start with the Falcons. They're a little desperate. I saw their owner, maybe it was at the Super Bowl. I don't know where he was making the rounds of saying, which isn't crazy, in the next couple of weeks, we will have serious discussions about the quarterbacks. They're not drafting in the top 5. So they're going to have to get aggressive with a trade of someone ideally they wouldn't like. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, let's face it, makes some sense. The New England Patriots are drafting 3rd, and there are a ton of quarterbacks in this draft. I would say that 100% getting one of those guys in the draft makes sense for them. There's a chance the Falcons don't have access to any of these guys because of where they're picking. So I don't think it's as crazy for the Falcons to just try to patchwork it for a season. I do think it's kind of nuts for the Patriots, who I expect to draft a quarterback. I broke down and registered for an Instagram account just for the mailbag. One topic I haven't heard discussed is what was going on with the Chiefs' clock management at the end of overtime. If Hardeman dropped that pass, the Chiefs probably have 5 seconds left and have to kick the field goal to go to double overtime. Did I miss something? Keep up the good work. I think I answered my own question. So go ahead and withdraw the question for the bag above. If the score is still tied at the end of overtime period, or in the second team's initial possession has not ended, the team will play another overtime period. Yeah, this is what was confusing, and I talked about this on the podcast. It's just like the second quarter. That is where Romo is right. You get just the play if it's 3rd down with 15 minutes left in the quarter. It doesn't like start anew. You just get to keep playing. The game just goes on. That's why Romo acting like you don't need to blow timeouts. Like you get 3 timeouts, which I'd argue is kind of dumb and a little excessive. Here would be one thing I would do if they discuss the overtime at the winter meetings. One would be I would only give 2 timeouts. I don't think you need to give 3 timeouts. And 2, I would give a challenge flag, which makes those timeouts a little more powerful because if you challenge a play, then you lose a timeout. The challenges went to the official review. There were a couple plays that I thought would have been challengeable, and they never reviewed it. So if I was a coach, I would be cool with giving up a timeout in overtime to have the power to challenge a play. Because in theory, they should be all over it. Well, we know these fucking idiots are not. So I forget the exact plays, but there definitely were 2 that I would have challenged if I was the other coach. Might have been both Andy Reid, honestly. The one where Patrick Mahomes got the 4th and 1, either when he ran it or threw it. Yeah, it was when he ran it. I guess they only had 1 4th down. But the one he ran sure looked to me like Pacheco was not down, rolled over, and got a 1st down. If I'm Andy Reid, I challenge that play. I'm looking around like, are they going to challenge? Are they going to challenge it from above? And they never did. There was one other play. Oh, the use check catch, which I'm glad they called a catch. But not crazy if you challenge it. In fairness, I do think the new overtime's a little confusing. I really do. Longtime listener, heartbroken Niner fan. Question for the mailbag. I'm already offended by this next line. I'm offended. I don't even know if I can read it. I don't want to read it, but I will for the people. Is Kyle Shanahan the next Brandon Staley? I know he's... I accidentally clipped something. I know he's done a lot to elevate our team post Harbaugh. I'd say so. But Kyle's low situational football IQ has cost us 3 Super Bowls. Meanwhile, the players are feeling crushed and taking responsibility, but Kyle has not openly admitted to his mistakes, such as deferring in overtime. I wouldn't, that's not a 100 mistake. Not going for it on 4th down. Agreed on that one. Aren't good leaders supposed to take accountability? Well, listen, I'm pro Kyle Shanahan. I think he's one of the best coaches in the league. Kyle Shanahan is not big on saying, I regret doing that. He was asked today in his press conference about the overtime situation. It would have been an easy one for him to say, if I had a do-over on that one, I would have gone for it down there in the red zone. But I've followed him long enough, which I respect. I like people who are true to themselves. As long as the players think he's accountable, listen, ideally the fans would, that they pay fucking for his salary and all the bills. It's just not going to be his thing. Last year, Brock Purdy, he refused to admit, hey, Kyle, if you got a do-over, would you call a different play? No, he didn't. And he still to this day, he does not regret it. Well, maybe he does, but he's never going to publicly say it. Compare Kyle Shanahan to Brandon Staley, though, is offensive. Brandon Staley is a position coach in the National Football League. A position coach. Kyle Shanahan is proven to be one of the, not just the best head coaches, but one of the best play callers. And resurrect a franchise that was fucking dead. Brandon Staley is one of the biggest frauds I've ever seen in all my time following sports. I throw Stan Van Gundy up there. There's some other ones, but Brandon Staley might take the cake. I think Chip Kelly has kind of turned into one. Kyle Shanahan's legit. Does he have some flaws? Does he have some things that ultimately he needs to improve on to become Andy Reid? 100%. So did Andy Reid once upon a time. Comparing him to Brandon Staley, I'm offended for Kyle Shanahan. That's just not fair. It's not. Brandon, I mean, I'm not trying to pick on Brandon Staley. Obviously, you brought him up, but that's just, no. Commanders fan. I was pulling for the Niners. Love Shanny and the Niners roster, beside Chase Young, for obvious reasons. I think they lost the game during their last possession in the fourth quarter. It was 3rd down and 4 yards to go. Instead of running the ball with McCaffrey, they threw an incomplete pass. They only had to get 1 first down to basically run out the clock and kick the winning field goal. Why didn't they hand it to him in the moment? Boggles my mind. Here's what I would say is they had a lot of run plays throughout that game that went nowhere. Now, they also had some successful ones, but there is no guarantee an inside or outside zone or just the staple of Kyle's offense, that sweet pitch play they like to run with pulling Trent Williams out in front and use check, would have worked. Obviously, if they got the first down, they run out the clock. I'm a huge Niner fan. A lot of heartache over the last decade. I feel you. Listening to Colin, I feel like Colin has a hard on Brock, not have a hard on. And he's only a second-year player. What reasons do we have to think he won't get better? Ready for the go low pods. We'll fire that up here. We got Riviera this weekend. I'll put out my bets on Wednesday on social medias. In theory, he should improve. In theory, he should be better. He didn't practice all offseason because his elbow was torn. So the offense should continue to mold to him. He obviously has some physical limitations. He does not have a big arm, and he's short. But can he maximize everything that he has? I think it is undeniable that everything we've seen out of Brock Purdy equals maximize all his talent. And then when you factor in his coach, some of the players around him, you'd feel pretty good. I agree with you. I think some of the criticism for a guy that makes $900,000 is insane. People are like, you guys are hard on Cousins and Dak and Derek Carr. Yeah, they make $35, $40 million. They take up a substantial amount of the salary cap. Brock makes it easy to build your team. Like, that's a huge part of his conversation. Hasn't been talked about much, but do you think the Seahawks should do in this year's draft? I think we need to highly consider taking a young quarterback. Geno is average, but never going to lead us to a championship. I feel like we can support a good young quarterback with our good receiving core and young defensive players. I would include Kenneth Walker as well, the stud running back. I would imagine that Michael Penix hiring Ben Grubb is going to be a guy that's highly discussed. I would imagine Michael Penix and Bo Nix will be two guys that Grubb has a lot of, experience with. He also played against, in college, J.J. McCarthy in the national championship game. So I would say all those guys are going to be in the mix for Seattle. If you had to base it off his previous, the guys he's liked, remember, Russell Wilson, a little bit of a flyer, great physical tools. He loved Josh Allen. I think a lot of us assumed that he would like Anthony Richardson. So if that's kind of the mold, I would say J.J. McCarthy is going to be someone he's going to like. Got a lot of tools, pretty raw, a lot of upside. He's a scouts type player. Swing for the fences. I start every morning with the pod and an espresso. I like this guy. Me too. Crazy scenario. 49ers lose the Super Bowl, then hire Belichick as head coach on a 1-year deal. Shanahan goes to offensive coordinator for the year. Offense taken care of, defensive taken care of. Bill gets the all-time win record next year, wins Super Bowl, then retires. Here's my proposal. I think it's borderline factual that Kyle and Bill Belichick have talked over the last month. Bill Belichick and Mike Shanahan were very close. When Bill was going to hire or trade Jimmy Garoppolo, when the Krafts and Brady kind of forced his hand, he called one person. He said, Kyle, you got about 2 hours. It was like 6 a.m. to make this decision. This is not a negotiation. Your second round pick, they were terrible at the time, for Jimmy G. Call me. You got 2 hours. It's like a hostage situation. Obviously, they did the deal. He called him. They have a good relationship. Bill Belichick likes Kyle Shanahan a lot. Do I think that Bill Belichick should be a defensive coordinator? Of course not. He's proven to be a head coach. If I'm Kyle Shanahan, I look at Jed York and I go, listen, will you give me a blank check to go hire Bill Belichick? Jed York runs around in Silicon Valley with all these billionaires that look at $20 million like most people look at $20. So if Kyle called Bill and said, listen, Bill, I don't think you want to be I don't view you as an assistant coach. But you clearly, there's no options for you this year. If you want to coach this year, here is a blank check. Tell me what your numbers. You want $20 million to be my defensive coordinator? I only make 15. Here's $20 million. You come with me. You go double middle finger to all these fucking idiot owners. We will kick the shit out of them all. And then next year, they will be lined up on their knees begging you to be their coach. That would be my approach. What would it cost, Bill? One, I'll leave you alone, obviously. You do whatever you want. Coach these guys up. Let's go win a Super Bowl. And let's go shove it to these owners that refuse to hire you. It's one of the biggest injustices in coaching history. That Belichick, with his resume, that's what I'd be saying if I was Kyle. We got pieces. We'll build this thing. You help some of my young DBs. I got you Fred Warner, Nick Bosa ready to go. Charvarius Ward we got a big corner for you. We'll keep Hufunga's coming back. Hargrave's under contract. Let's get it done. And Bill's probably like, bro, I'm good. Talk to you later. I know you picked the Niners, which I did. Are you surprised the Chiefs aren't favored? Let's do a look back on we'll end on this, the last 3 games. Going to Buffalo, based on their season, I don't think it's crazy they weren't favored. With the Ravens, the Chiefs will tell you that is one of the best teams, if not the best team, in the AFC going into the game they had played, especially on the road. It was only a second road game of the era. That team on paper should have won the Super Bowl. Games aren't played on paper. So once they win that game, they beat the team that beat the living piss out of the Niners. What the game should have been is a coin flip. It should have been a pick 'em. But Vegas sets the line based on how people will bet. They took a bloodbath. They really did. Because I think if you flip it and make the Chiefs -2.5, -2, you probably get a lot more even money and Vegas wouldn't have gotten killed. But everybody, beside your boy here, everyone I know some people that made a lot of money. I know some people that have bet with the Chiefs basically every underdog game, the 3 straight games. I didn't get the exact number, but I think it's a high rolling better. That number might be approaching 6 figures because early on he hammered him and he just kept doubling down. And he felt pretty good. Now, the Super Bowl would have been a little dicey, but he definitely felt pretty good in the previous 2 games, especially the Baltimore game. They had the lead the whole time. I think it's one of Vegas's biggest mistakes. And I don't think it happens again. I don't think we see that scenario play out again. That Patrick Mahomes is an underdog in any scenario. Unless the league forces them to play with 3-0 linemen or something. If Patrick Mahomes is there and Andy Reid's there, and they have they're in the playoffs, I would never ever bet against them ever again. Obviously they're going to eventually lose a playoff game, but it's one of the great lessons we've learned. Maybe many of you didn't because you bet on the Chiefs. But for those of us and Vegas, idiots.